Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Ready for Rome webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shelly Ruel, and I am the community manager here at ItaliaPass. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Sofia Bragaglia, and she is one of our ItaliaPass Primo traveler experience specialists. So she helps all of our Primo members and also our rail customers with booking and assistance around their travel to Italy. And also if you're a Primo member with their benefits. So we're going to talk to you a little bit more today about what Primo is and also get into all the information that we're going to share with you about Rome. So welcome. We'll get started here. First of all, I wanted to explain to everybody what is ItaliaPass, because I'm assuming most of you arrived at this webinar because you were an Italia Rail customer. And so ItaliaPass is a sister brand of Italia Rail. There's a family of brands. So there's Italia Rail, Italia Tours, Italia Drive, and Italia Hotels. And since 1987, these brands have worked with millions of tourists exploring Italy. And so our CEO and founder decided to help our customers create their best trip to Italy ever. And that's how ItaliaPass came to be. And ItaliaPass actually is two types of membership. So there's an online community, which is the community that I manage, and that's completely free. You can come over there, ask any questions about travel to Italy. And then we also have a Primo benefits program. So that's a membership that costs $99 and gives you over $500 in value for your travel to Italy. And so as we go through the presentation today, we'll be putting some slides in to give you a little bit of an idea of what the benefits are in case that's something that might interest you to add on to your Italy trip. And so in terms of the webinar today, this is about a little bit about what we're going to cover. It's going to be about a half an hour presentation with 15 minutes at the end for a live Q&A. We're going to talk about arriving at the Fiumicino Airport and how to get into the city center, because most of you will probably be arriving at the airport. We'll talk about the lounge that we offer at Rome's Termini train station. I will be talking to you about how to get around on public transport here in Rome, as well as some local customs and information about eating out and menus, tipping, things like that. And then Sophia will talk to you a little bit about how you can get into the Colosseum for free and an automatic refund on a tour. And then I will give you some tips about how to avoid tourist traps and some local tips about getting around here in Rome. For the Q&A at the end, if you see at the bottom of your screen where the icons are, there's an icon for Q&A. It's going to be a chat format. So you may see it as the three dots in the bottom where it says more. You may need to go there for Q&A. You can type in your questions at any time, and we will get to those at the end in a chat format. We'll respond live. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague to tell you about how to get into the city from the airport.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Shelly, for having me. So yeah, let's get started. Let's see. Once you arrive at FCO, as Shelly mentioned, that's the main airport in Rome. Most flights into Italy or most flights into Rome usually land there. And it's a pretty big airport. There are several ways to get from that airport into the city, and we're just going to go through them as an overview of the options that we have. So the first option would be reaching Rome Termini by train. Rome Termini is the main station in Rome. There are two main types of trains that you can take. And the first one is called Leonardo Express. It's a direct train to Roma Termini. It's available on our website, Italia Rail. It's usually around $16. It's direct, nonstop, takes 30 minutes to reach the station. It's a very handy option. And the second one would be another local train from a smaller network line, which won't get you into Roma Termini, but it will get you into smaller stations called Trastevere and Ostiense. Those are also available on our website. They're $10. And yeah, if you're trying to get into that side of the city, depending on where you're trying to get, you might benefit from one or the other. And that's it for trains. The other options would be taxis, which are available outside the terminal for a fixed rate of 55 euros. We also have shuttle buses, private transfers that you can book with us. Our private transfers usually go straight to your accommodation, or if you need to be somewhere else, we can arrange that for you. So depending on your needs, you may decide to pick one option or the other. With trains, of course, there's a few things to keep in mind. If you do pick either the Leonardo Express or the other local trains, make sure that you know exactly when you're landing, and make sure that you leave some buffer time, to actually make your way to the train. Even if you have a train in Termini that you're trying to connect to, we usually recommend booking the Leonardo Express, let's say 1 hour and a half, 2 hours after your landing, just to make sure you have enough time. And at the very least, wait 3 hours after your arrival to book anything from Termini. If you're trying to get to Florence, Naples, just make sure you have enough time. And yeah, that's pretty much it for getting into the city. Another question we get fairly often is, should I rent a car? This is $1 million question, really. Again, this heavily depends on your needs and what you would like to do once you're in Italy. So let's say if you know that you're going to be exploring a lot of the countryside, or let's say some remote areas in Tuscany, for example, I would say yes, definitely rent a car. It can be a great option, very handy. I usually recommend renting a small car, given that the roads in Italy tend to be a bit narrow a lot of the time. But if you're trying to stay into the cities, maybe that would not be the best option. So let's say you're trying to explore Florence, Venice, and Rome. You just want to see the cities themselves. You can easily travel in between them with trains. There's high-speed trains connecting most major cities. And overall, navigating these cities inside of the city center with a car is not great usually. There's a lot of limited areas for traffic. There's a lot of traffic in and of itself. So if you're trying to stay inside the cities, I would not recommend booking a car or renting a car. If you're trying to explore the countryside, then yes, that's definitely a great option. Regardless, if you do decide to rent one, we do have a platform to do that. We have our website, italiadrive.com. And our Primo members do get $10 off of rentals. So if you decide to go for that, that's a great option. Now we have the Italia Pass Lounge. That's another perk of being a Primo member. It's access to our lounge in Roma Termini. This is the only station where our lounge is available. And it's just a place where you can relax, just unwind before boarding your train, or if you've just gotten to Rome and you're waiting for your hotel check-in time, or you just want to hang out for a little while, have a coffee. This is the place to be. It's at track 25, and of course, it offers our members free Wi-Fi, espresso, obviously, some refreshments, free luggage storage. The luggage storage is for carry-ons or larger suitcases, depending on what you need. And of course, we have our hosts there to welcome you. And if you have any questions regarding, anything immediate that you need for your travels in Rome, they'll be happy to help you. And now I'll hand it over to Shelley for some information about public transport within the city.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the public transport system in Rome is called ATAC. And here in Rome, we have 3 different types of transport. The majority of the public transport is buses. We do have a subway, an underground line. It's called the Metro. That's short for Metropolitana. It only has 2 lines, so it's extremely easy to navigate. Also because those 2 lines only intersect at one point, and that point is Rome Termini train station. So there's an A line and a B line, and if you need to transfer from one to the other, then you get off at Termini and change to the other line. And there are also a couple of trams as well. Tickets are relatively inexpensive compared to other large European cities. At the current time, they cost €1.50. And our tickets work on a time-limited basis. So you don't need to worry about traveling through different zones of the city. Once you get your ticket, once you first validate that ticket, it's good for 100 minutes. There's one exception to that, however. The ticket is only good for one ride on the subway within that 100-minute period. So let's say you board a bus. As soon as you board the bus, if whatever your first transport is that you board, that's where you're going to validate your ticket. And I'm going to explain a little bit about where you can get your tickets. There are machines on the buses. You're going to put your ticket into the machine. It's going to grab the ticket, stamp it, and then spit it back out. You only have to do that once. Once you've done that, it's stamped with the time that you started. So if an inspector were to get on the bus, you would just show your ticket and they would see if it was still valid, if you still had time on it. Now, you'll use that ticket to go into the metro. You'll have to insert it at the turnstile. It will spit it back out. And then you can have one metro ride. So basically what that means is once you're in the station until the time you exit the station, whether you change lines or not, that ticket is valid. Once you exit the station, it's no longer valid for a metro ride. However, if you still have time left in that 100-minute span, then you can still ride buses and trams. So in terms of ticketing, at the subway and on a few buses, I don't want to really say a lot of buses. I would not count on this system on the buses. However, for sure in the metro, you can use tap and go. So if you have a contactless payment card or even on your smartphone, you just simply tap at the turnstile and it will deduct $1.50 from your account or charge your account with $1.50. The one thing here is that you do need to use one separate card or payment method for each rider. So you can't use the same card for multiple tickets. The reason being is that although you probably would never be checked on the metro by an inspector because the turnstile ensures that you've paid, if you're on the bus and an inspector were to ask to see your ticket, you would then show your payment method. That is the validity of your ticket. So that's a really convenient way. You don't have to wait at the ticket machines inside the subway. You can just pass right through if you have a contactless payment system. Now, in terms of tickets, tickets are called biglietto. One ticket would be one biglietto or biglietti. You can purchase those at machines, which are found in the metro station. There aren't very many machines around the city in terms of like at a bus stop. That's not very common. In terms of if you're going around the city and you need to get a ticket, you're going to want to stop into a tabaccheria, which is a tobacconist shop. Those are really easy to identify because they have a T over the door, a sign with a T on it over the door, or at one of the many, many newsstands throughout the city. And you'll just ask for a biglietto and pay. You can carry some small cash around with you to buy those tickets if you need them. One bus I did want to point out to you is bus route 64. This bus route is super convenient for visitors to the city because the 2 points where it starts and ends are at Termini Station, which we've mentioned several times is the main train station. It crosses the entire historic center and ends at the Vatican. So this is going to be a handy bus route for you if you want to see all the major sites. One caveat is that because of the fact that it does attract a lot of tourists, this bus can be very crowded. Less so now because we're moving into low season. However, it tends to be crowded, and that means that it's a target for pickpockets. Now, I don't say this to scare you or worry you at all. Rome is a very safe city. However, we do have some petty crime in the high tourist areas. But knock on wood, I've been here for 23 years now and I've never been pickpocketed. And the reason is I'm just very aware of my surroundings. So you can do the same thing. When you get on the bus, just be aware of your surroundings, but also your belongings. So if you have a purse, maybe wear it like a crossbody bag. Men with wallets, rather than putting them in your back pocket, maybe keep them if you have like inside a pocket in a jacket pocket, a breast pocket, or your front pocket, somewhere where you can keep an eye on it, keep a hand on it. Because a lot of times in a crowd, that's where pickpockets will bump and you won't feel it. And they're very skilled. Unfortunately, they're very, very skilled. You wouldn't even notice that they've taken your wallet or your whatever you had in your purse. So that advice goes for you on bus 64, but it also goes for you in any of the highly populated tourist areas. So let's say in front of the Trevi Fountain, Spanish Steps, anywhere you're going to be at the Colosseum, any of these areas where crowds congregate. Just be aware of your belongings. Don't worry because there are plenty of people who are distracted, and those are the people that the pickpockets are going to target. All right, so now on to some of the really fun stuff. I know that you're gonna love and enjoy our delicious food here in the city. And I wanted to give you a few tips of things that might be a little bit different than you're used to. So here, in terms of comparing the times that we eat to North American dining times, we're a little bit later than you might be used to. We generally start lunch around 1 p.m. to 1:30, and we start dinner around 8 p.m. to 8:30. Now, this doesn't mean you can't get food in a restaurant before those times. However, the local restaurants most likely aren't going to have diners before those times. So if you would like to eat outside of those times, you're going to probably want to go to one of the more touristy areas where they're going to probably have a open service throughout the whole day. The reason I put check on the bullet points here, check is il conto. The thing about the check that I've noticed that some people who have visited have asked me about and was something new for them is that generally speaking, your wait staff here is not going to leave your check until you ask for it. So I've noticed, for example, in the United States, a lot of times waiters and wait staff will when they bring the food, they'll kind of put the check down and just say, okay, I'll take that whenever you're ready as a courtesy so that when you're ready to go, you can go. It's pretty much the exact opposite here. So you will not generally be given your check until you ask. And the reason for that is out of respect and courtesy for the fact that here in Italy, it's a custom to, when you go out to dinner, that's like a cherished time to spend time with your family and friends. And so the wait staff wants you to feel comfortable knowing that you've got that table for as long as you like it, as long as you want to visit with your family and friends. And so putting the check down might be a little bit feeling like they're trying to push you out. And so if you're wondering, how come they're not giving us our check? Like it's not good service. It's actually because they want to respect the fact that they don't want you to feel like they're pushing you out. One exception to that might be if you're in a super popular restaurant where they've told you ahead of time, we need to turn this table at X time, but that's rare. Most of the time you can just leisurely stay at your table. And so ask for the check is all I'm saying here. Tipping, people ask me a lot about tipping. You don't need to tip. Most of my friends here locally don't leave tips. At most, you might leave €1 per person if you thought you had really good service and you want to give them a courtesy. The wait staff here is paid a regular salary. They don't work for tips. So although it might feel uncomfortable coming from a culture where maybe you're leaving a 20% tip because the wait staff doesn't make even minimum wage, they work for tips. That's not the case here. So don't feel uncomfortable about not leaving a tip or just leaving a small token of like €1 or €2. That's perfectly fine. Same goes for taxis. People ask me a lot about taxis as well. You don't need to tip in a taxi. If you're paying cash, it's courteous to round up to the next euro just so the taxi driver doesn't have to make small change. So when you go to a restaurant, I wanted to tell you a few things about the menus that you might not be used to, and two types of restaurants, because not everybody knows that you may not be able to get pizza at every single restaurant that you go to because a ristorante might not necessarily have pizza. Sometimes they do, but if you're looking specifically to eat one of our typical Roman pizzas, then I would suggest you look for a pizzeria, which is going to be a sit-down pizza restaurant, or a street food that you'll find as you're walking around the city, which is called Pizza al Taglio. And I'm going to explain how both of those work. They're a little bit different. But in terms of the first bullet point there where you see ristorante, so in a restaurant, your menu is typically going to have different sections. You're going to have an antipasto, which are appetizers, a primo, which are going to be your pasta dishes, or risotto. It will also be rice if there's a risotto on the menu. And the secondo is going to be your meat and fish. Now, do you have to order from every single category in the menu? Absolutely not. You can pick and choose. So feel free to mix and match. Just let your wait staff know, and they'll probably ask if, for example, you order a primo and your dining companion orders a secondo, they're probably going to ask you, do you want those to come out together? And you can tell them yes. So that's the ristorante menu. Now, in a pizzeria, so Roman pizza is a very thin crust, and it's served individual. Everyone gets their own individual pizza. Don't worry, it's not going to be a giant deep dish pizza. It will come uncut on a plate. And so the way it works with the toppings, which is why I have toppings here listed, the toppings are preset. So on the menu, you're going to find names for the pizzas. It's not going to be where you just get to decide whatever toppings you want on your pizza. So a cheese pizza is called margherita, and then you're going to find other names on the menu, and the toppings that are the combination for that type of pizza will be listed. So just choose the one that sounds the best to you and order that. And pizza al taglio, which also goes along with the second bullet point, fritti, suppli, in the pizzeria and also at the pizza al taglio, which is like the street food pizza. You see this picture in the lower right corner, that's called a suppli. So that's a very traditional Roman specialty. That's an appetizer at pizza restaurants. It is a fried rice ball with mozzarella in the middle. So they take rice, put tomato meat sauce, put mozzarella in the middle, bread it, and deep fry it. So it's a great little snack, especially if you're walking around the city, costs around €1, €1.10. So I encourage you to try the fritti. Fritti means fried. So there's a lot of fried appetizers at the pizza restaurants prior to your pizza. And the pizza al taglio is literally, it means cut pizza. So when you're walking around the city and you see these pizza places, you're gonna see pizza behind like a glass kind of cafeteria counter, and it's sold by weight, okay? So it's not sold by the piece, generally speaking, it's not. What you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of indicate the pizza that you want. There's gonna be lots of different types with different toppings. And the person serving you is gonna maybe indicate with their hands, how much do you want? You tell them how much you want, more or less. They'll cut it, they're gonna weigh it, and then you can either take it away in a box or you can even eat it. They'll wrap it up in paper and you can eat it walking. That's perfectly acceptable and fine. And the price generally ranges, I would say, anywhere from €5, 5 to 7 per person. It depends. If you're downtown, it might be a little bit more, but it's pretty reasonably priced for a snack. So that's the lay of the land when it comes to restaurants and pizza. Last, but definitely not least, is espresso. You should definitely try our coffee here. It's world famous. And if you want to drink coffee like a local, then you go to what's called Il Bar, which is the coffee bar. The way it works is you're going to go first to the register. 99% of the time. You might find a quirky place that wants you to order first. That happened to me in Florence a couple weekends ago, but most of the time you're going to go to the register, you're going to order what you want and pay for it. They're going to give you your receipt, and they're going to take your receipt over to the coffee counter, and you'll order directly with the barista. So you'll repeat what you already repeated to the cashier. Now, something to be aware of is that when you say cafe here in Italy, they are understanding that to mean espresso. So don't think that if you say cafe, they're going to give you an American style coffee. Cafe to them means espresso coffee. You can get an American style coffee. You just have to order an Americano. That's pretty easy to remember. That's an espresso, just like in the States with water, hot water added. Now, the big debate is, can I get a cappuccino after dinner? If you want to be super local, you would never ask for a cappuccino after dinner. In fact, some restaurants may not even have the milk to make a cappuccino, some really local places. We drink cappuccino for breakfast, and we drink espresso. If you do want the caffeine, you can have an espresso after dinner. However, if you're at a place that caters to tourists, you can certainly ask for a cappuccino. If that's what you prefer, they'll probably have it on hand for you. In terms of the best places to try espresso here in the city, I'm going to have a couple of names for you in a resource list that I'm going to provide to you after this presentation. You're going to be getting a follow-up email that's going to include a recording of this presentation, a list of the resources we're talking about today, and also a recap of our Q&A session. All right, so now I'm going to turn it back over to Sophia to talk to you about how to get into the sites.
Thank you, Shelley. So yeah, you've now visited Rome. You know how to get around. You've tried the suppli and the frittini. What can we see in Rome? Of course, everybody knows the main sites. Let's start from the Colosseum. I will say our Primo members do get into the for free, or at least they have an opportunity to do so. Each of our members get one free skip the line ticket, which is a $22 value. And it gives you access for a self-guided tour of the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, and the Palatine Hill. If you want a guided tour, we also provide that. We have guided tours of the Vatican, the Colosseum. We have walking tours of the city itself. So if you want to see, let's say, Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps, the Pantheon, and hear the history behind them, that is something that we offer. We also have something called the Rome Tour Pass, which if you're staying in Rome for at least a couple of days could benefit you in that regard, as it includes everything that I mentioned before. and it gives you the opportunity to spread out these tours as you see fit throughout your stay in Rome. If you do choose one of our tours as a Primo member, you will also get $100 off of your first order and 10% off of every following one. For the Vatican, we do get a lot of questions about the dress code. So just a quick note on that. A general rule is if you're visiting the Vatican or really any main basilica or church in the city, you'd need to wear clothes that will cover your shoulders and knees. This is especially true for the Vatican, but it's a good rule to keep in all the churches in the city, really. You also won't be able to bring large backpacks or strollers. So if you do visit the Vatican and the Colosseum, make sure that you have a small bag, a purse, a crossbody bag, something small that they'll let you bring in. Now for our Italy magazine, as you can see in the slide, our Primo membership includes an annual subscription to our Italy magazine premium. Now we have a special offer, a recent offer actually, for a special edition it's the special Vatican City edition of Bellissimo, which will give you some insider tips on visiting some iconic landmarks within the Vatican ahead of the Jubilee next year. This issue is crafted for first-time visitors, or if you've already been to the Vatican and you just need a quick refresher, this is the one for you. And in order to get access to it, you'll just have to fill out a brief survey, and all of the information will be included in the community online on our website.
Okay. So I'll go ahead now and talk to you about how to avoid some of the most common tourist traps here in Rome. So the first thing is that if you are in the downtown area where there's lots of tourists, avoid restaurants that have pictures on their menu or people trying to, what I call promoters, trying to get you to come inside. Those are typically catering to tourists. It doesn't mean you'll necessarily have a terrible meal, but it just probably won't be as authentic as somewhere that doesn't cater to tourists. Secondly, to make you aware, I took this photo here at the top. There was this gladiator coming home from his hard day at work with his Samsonite suitcase. There are gentlemen who dress up as gladiators at the Colosseum, and what they will do is want to take a photo with you. If you want to do that, just be aware that they do cost. Do agree on the price before you go ahead and have that photo taken to avoid any unpleasant surprises, and maybe they'll be trying to charge a lot of money after you've already taken the photo. Also, you see this gentleman in the bottom right. Something that's also very typical is these rose sellers. They'll go around and I put gifts. Sometimes they'll hand it to you and say, here's a gift. And then, of course, once it's in your hand, they try to get money for it, and that can put you in an uncomfortable spot. So don't worry about just walking by. If you don't want a rose, there's plenty of other tourists who are going to be willing to purchase the roses from them. And gelato, I hope you're going to love and enjoy our delicious gelato. Just beware if you see these tubs with these huge, huge puffy like gelato coming over the top. That's generally a sign that they've puffed it a lot with air, and a gelataio worth his salt or her salt would never have gelato puffing up like that. Those are typically more commercial style gelatos, and if they're very bright colors, it's probably also artificially colored. So those are some things to be aware of. Last but not least, a few of my local tips. Throughout the city, we have fountains like the one you see in the photo in the top middle, and they run constantly. They come from a deep underground spring, comes out ice cold, so you can refill your refillable water bottles here. They're called nasoni, which means big noses because of the way the spigot looks. And if you want to be super local and you don't have a bottle, you can plug that spigot with your thumb. There's a hole in the top and it will shoot out like a fountain. Just make sure you don't spray anybody who's walking by. Next, I always love to tell people to go to Villa Borghese for a picnic. It's somewhere that a lot of tourists don't manage to get to necessarily if you're doing the quick tour through Rome, but it's a wonderful green park, very spacious, and you can rent one of these fun, they're called Risho, these bikes. You can rent a bike for an hour, drive all around the park. It's right next to the city zoo, or you can even take a rowboat out on the lake. So that's a nice off the beaten path place to visit. And of course, last but not least, have an aperitivo. You may know about our iconic Aperol Spritz. Aperitivo is a pre-dinner drink. It can be one with alcohol or no alcohol. And oftentimes you can get a lot of little snacks. This one at Mecanismo, which I'll have the address for you, is, I believe, still only 10 euros. It can almost be a dinner in and of itself. So that's a fun tradition for you to take part in. And last, I'm going to have Sophia tell you about the Borgia Gallery.
Thank you, Shelley. I just noticed there seemed to be some sort of glitch with my camera. I hope that wasn't too distracting. I'm not sure what happened, but it seems to be back now. So yeah, last but not least, our gallery, the Borgia Gallery. This is one of our latest attractions. This is something that our members have access to, and it's one of the only places in the city where you can access the original ancient Rome on the street level. So it's a gallery where we usually host our aperitivo events. Again, it's complimentary for Primo members. And during your visit, during our events at the gallery, you'll usually hear about the history of the Borgia family, whom you may be familiar with from all the series and media that has been made about them. And of course, get a unique look into the Roman Renaissance, which was a very important period, of course, for the city. And of course, everything is paired with a wine tasting and an aperitivo overall, which is, of course, a great way to experience the local culture with a local sommelier who will be able to tell you all about the city. Unfortunately, as of now, our gallery will be closed, not as of today, but probably starting, I believe the date would be November 25th. So if you're traveling after November 25th until the end of the year, this may not be available, but we are working on offering an alternative experience for our members. So stay tuned for that one.
Okay, so that wraps up our presentation. So as I mentioned, you'll receive an email that has links to the resources we talked about, a Q&A recap, and a recording of this webinar. And if you want to access the resource list on your own before the email arrives, you can just go over to our community, just go to italiapass.com, click community, and then in the sidebar on the left, you'll see Ready for Rome orientation under Italy travel planning. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and we're going to move into the Q&A portion of our webinar, and we'll just jump right in. So if you have a question, go ahead and write it in the chat in the Q&A section. So John is asking, is cash or card the preferred method of payment? So John, luckily we have come into the 21st century over here, and cards are accepted pretty much everywhere now. I would carry a small amount of cash just for small purchases, say, like I was saying before, like a ticket at the newsstand. But generally speaking, even at the coffee bar, you can even pay for a coffee with your debit or credit card nowadays, or your smartphone. So yes.
I also see a question, where is the best place to get cash? How much should I bring at first? I would say the best place to get cash, if you're not carrying some from wherever you're traveling from, would probably be the official bank ATMs. You will find some ATMs that are smaller around the city, but I would not recommend using those just because there tends to be a few fees that are not ideal. So usually either the post office or an official bank would be the best bet, I'd say. And how much should I bring? I would say, I'm not sure, if you're staying in the city, you can also pay with the card. So it's up to you, really. I don't think it's a major thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Getting it out of the bank machines, which are called bancomat, is definitely the best bet. And those ATMs that Sophia was mentioning, I've noticed the name, they're called Euronet. You're going to find them at a lot of touristy places. They have really high fees. So yeah, definitely to avoid. Is the Trevi Fountain still under renovation? You know, I haven't checked to see kind of what the situation is over at the Trevi Fountain, if there's scaffolding or things like that, but definitely you're going to encounter a lot of construction in the city right now because we're getting ready for the Jubilee year, which only happens once every 25 years. They're expecting 35 million visitors next year. So there's lots of construction going on. I will look up and see what the situation is over at the Trevi Fountain, and put that in our Q&A recap. Because I don't know if it's under renovation, what the visibility there would be, but you can certainly go over. They never block off the area. You could always walk by. I just don't know if there's scaffolding there and they're doing construction. I'll double check on that. My gut feeling is no. I think that the major renovation work that they did was a while ago, but we'll see.
I think so as well. Then again, they're going back and forth a little bit, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of chaos right now in the city with construction. Most things remain open, but visibility of things may be a little bit blocked. It depends.
Definitely. Okay, next question. When taking baggage on the train, do you check it or do you keep it with you? You keep it with you at all times. It depends on the type of train that you are traveling on. Usually high-speed trains have a dedicated area for luggage. It's usually at the end of each carriage. If it's a small piece of luggage, you can also use the overhead compartment, or sometimes you can also just put it below the seats. But overall, there's no check-in for luggage. It's just something that you would keep with you.
I'll let you take the next one too, because it's a train question. You're the expert.
Absolutely. So for a train from FCO to Termini, is it okay to book at the time? Or how about for day trips to other cities? So you can book. I'm assuming this, you mean if you can book on the spot? That is a possibility, but we usually recommend booking in advance, especially if you're doing a day trip to another city. It's really important to check for availability because most cities are connected by high-speed trains that have very they can have some limited availability for the seats. So if you're planning on going to Florence from Rome, Naples, you name it, definitely book in advance. And from FCO to Termini, I would still book in advance just to make sure that you have everything laid out. But that's more up to you, I would say.
Okay, I'll take the next two then. Let's see. This one says taxis take credit cards. Yes, they do. However, I would advise you to just ask before, just to be double sure that your driver, one time it happened to me that his POS machine was dead. So like you have to just double check. That's just Rome for you. Just never know. But yeah, they do. They do take credit cards. Steve asks, is there a metro entry or exit near Foro Romano? Your best bet in that area is going to be Colosseo. So there's on the B line of the metro, you can get off at Colosseo, which is just like it sounds. It's right in front of the Colosseum. And that would be the closest one. That's pretty much the only metro that gets you down into the historic center. They're building a third line for the Jubilee, but it's not ready yet.
Next one, let's see. If you're staying out of the way of touristy places but don't have confidence in Italian, is it okay to wing it? Or is it better to do sign language or Google Translate? I'd say either works, really. I feel like most people in Italy really appreciate the effort if you try to speak Italian. So even if it's, you know, just a basic knowledge of the language, or if you're just trying, it will always be appreciated. But of course, if you're struggling to get the message across, opening your phone and going on Google Translate also works. That's completely okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I would say Rome, in my experience, even more so. I mean, some cities are a little bit shy. They're more shy or closed off, but Rome is a pretty gregarious and open city. And I think that you're going to probably you're going to end up finding that most people will try to speak English with you, the smaller little amount of English that they have. So don't let that worry you. It will be fun. You'll enjoy interacting with the locals. Bob is asking, you mentioned not all buses have tap and go. Are you out of luck if one without it shows up? So you're not out of luck if you have a ticket. So I would suggest if you plan to use the public transport system, when you pass by a newsstand or a tobacconist shop, just duck in and get 2 tickets per person in your traveling party. Because that'll get you to where you want to go and back. Because that way, if you do get on a bus that doesn't have the tap and go, you've got a paper ticket and you're good to go with that. I didn't mention this, but no one checks you when you get on the bus. It's not like some cities where you have to stop at the driver and he checks your ticket. That's not how it works. You're just going to board the bus at the front or the back doors and just take your seat and put your ticket in the machine and validate it. If that's the first ride, if it's the second or third or subsequent ride, your ticket is already validated. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, I was always surprised that I was very surprised to find out that it's not the same over here. It was quite a strange cultural shock. What's the best luggage to use, carry-on or check-in luggage? So for traveling around, I guess it would depend on how long you're staying in Rome or in Italy in general. Of course, if you're staying for quite a long time, you may want a bigger bag to for your belongings. But if you're planning on moving around a lot, my recommendation would be just try to travel light. The fewer bags and the smaller they are, the easier it will be to get on trains and off of them. Mind you, there's no porter services in the train stations. So you'll have your luggage with you at all times. You will be responsible for it. And especially if you're walking to your hotel, even especially in other cities, you may have to walk quite a bit. So my recommendation would be, if you can, try to just keep a carry-on and make that work.
Yeah, after I started traveling several years, someone gave me the advice, pack your bag and then take out half. And it really is true. You always have, I'm going to take all these shoes or all these clothes, and you only end up wearing a small. So that's probably advice that you can use, but I agree. What's better to use for the fastest, Uber or taxi or train? I'm going to assume, Corinne, that you're talking about coming in from the airport. So depends. It depends. Train, the times are set because it's a train track. Taxi, it's going to depend on where your accommodations are within the city. Same goes for Uber. Now, if you're talking about within the city, then we're talking about Uber or taxi. Uber is more expensive. They have that dynamic, I think it's called dynamic pricing, surge pricing. So it can be quite expensive. Taxis have regulated taxi meters. You're going to want to make sure you take a white official taxi. There's taxi stands throughout the city. And in the resource list I'm going to provide, there's an app you can download. It's called IT Taxi. So that way you don't have to worry about the language barrier. One thing to know about taxis here in Rome is we don't hail taxis. So if you see a taxi coming by, generally speaking, they're not going to stop. However, I did see it happen the other day. An Italian friend of mine raised his hand up. I said, oh my God, it stopped. I was like, whoa, it's the first time I've ever seen that ever. And he said, oh, if the light is on, he says to me, if the light is on the top of the taxi, that means he's available. So you can try it. I've seen it happen, but it's not very common. It's more common to get it at a stand in the tourist, generally in most of the tourist areas, there's going to be a designated taxi stand. Okay, I'll let you take the next one.
Absolutely. So Bobby's asking, can I just pay for the Leonardo Express when I'm ready? Yeah, of course. As I mentioned before, I would recommend booking the tickets for the Leonardo Express once you know your flight time and how much time you will need after that. As I mentioned, I would keep at least 2 hours from your arrival time into FCO. And once you have that, I would just go ahead and book it. But of course, if you need to do some additional planning of any sorts, that's completely okay.
Okay, and the next question is Uber prevalent in Rome? Yes, Uber is prevalent. We don't have Lyft. So Uber, you just use your regular Uber app when you're over here, and it's pretty straightforward. So yes, it is prevalent.
And the final question I see here, Vince asking, would you recommend the hop-on, hop-off bus? Yeah, absolutely. If you're trying to get around Rome and you want to, just see the city at a glance from passing by all the major attractions, absolutely. It is something that we offer as well. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us, and I can send you a copy of the map. There's different versions of the hop-on, hop-off bus, but in general, it's a good experience to have. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And that brings us right to 45 past. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap all these Q&A. I will send out the recording to every one of you who has registered. And I just wish you a wonderful trip to Italy and thank you for joining us today.
Have a
Buon
great
viaggio.
time.